Ravens were up 24-9 at one point, and it didn't matter. Browns made the comeback. I do want to go through the sequence of the game, right? It started with Deshaun Watson, less than a minute into the game, throwing a pick six to Kyle Hamilton on a tipped pass. Unbelievable play by Kyle Hamilton. As a blitzer, tips it up, catches it, runs it in, and Baltimore's up 7-0 about 40 seconds into the game. Incredible start. They were up 14-0, then 24-9, but the Browns kept battling back.
No, they did. They were down multiple scores in the fourth quarter. The game looked, for all intents and purposes, like it was Baltimore's to win all the way through. And then Deshaun Watson actually has a good second half. Didn't have a good overall game.
Yeah.
But the second half, he was like 14 for 14 or something in the second half, which some Browns fans out there are like claiming means he played perfectly in the second half. The distinction between a perfect completion rate and a perfect game appears to pass them by.
Oh, so the PFF grade should be 100?
Yes.
Is what you're saying?
Exactly. According to them, essentially, yes.
Yeah.
100 grade for the second half, and then whatever you want to do to that with the first half involved. But that's
Find
what
better
the
fans,
expectation
but yeah,
is.
go on.
But the point being, he played well in the second half and was a big part of them coming back in that game. Remember we talked before for the preview of this game. This is the game. This is the reason Deshaun Watson's there. And by the way, up until halftime, you're looking around the landscape and you're like, we traded 3 first-round picks, a third and a fourth, and then paid this guy $230 million in addition to the PR nightmare that was. And it's not immediately obvious that he's any better than either the guy that was starting last year, Baker Mayfield, or the guy that was buried on the depth chart last year and we shipped away for a 5th-round pick or something in Josh Dobbs. That's not great. And then the second half, Deshaun Watson goes out there, does complete all 14 of his attempts, has a passing touchdown, and plays probably the best half of football he's played as a Cleveland Brown. And all right, that right there was the reason. Now, we need that all the time, but that at least was a sign and a glimpse and an important one because without it, they don't win the game. That was the reason we went through this A, PR nightmare, and B, cost so much to get him.
Yeah, Watson did play well down the stretch. I want to go back through the sequencing, but yeah, Watson on the game-winning drive hit a bunch of big throws, 16-yard scramble to set up the eventual game-winning field goal. But what actually happened in this game, going backwards a little bit here, after the pick six, Keaton Mitchell comes back for the Ravens with a 39-yard touchdown run. One of only 3 carries for Mitchell, though, even though he's become a big play threat for the Ravens. But they're up 14-0.
And 1 catch for 30-something yards. Keaton Mitchell's, he's like the new Devin Achane. He's going to average 100 yards a touch, and we're barely going to give him the football.
Is he 3rd in the league in rushing yards now, like Achane was when he left? Both teams were trading field goals for a little while. The Browns blocked a field goal, which ends up becoming a big play as well. It's 17-9 Ravens going into the half, right? Didn't it feel like the Ravens were up 14-0? Feels like they're in control, but the Browns defense did a really nice job, right? This wasn't the Browns defense giving up all these points.
Yeah.
It was a pick six. There was a short field a little bit later on. But then what looked like, all right, this is the Ravens running away with it. Odell Beckham turns back the clock with a 40-yard touchdown on a slant. And it's all right, old school OBJ. It's now 24-9. This is the Ravens team that destroyed Seattle, destroyed Detroit, and is going to do this again. But this time it's a division rival. But again, the Browns kept coming back. They score a touchdown. They go for 2. A 17-play, 75-yard drive, Sam. Finish it with Kareem Hunt, but they go for 2, down 15. Mm-hmm. This is a controversial play in Michigan Penn State. Why did James Franklin go for 2 when you're down 9 after the touchdown? But the Browns did that to get within 7. But then they muff a punt. It was like the Browns kept trying to give the game back to the Ravens. Short field, Ravens go up 2 scores again, but the Browns just keep battling back, all a part of Deshaun Watson and his really strong second half.
Yeah, is that still a controversial thing, the going for 2 early? Are we not?
I was in DMs with our friend Booger this week, Saturday, trying to explain the logic there.
But most people know now.
So Boog and I, I didn't want to call him out on Twitter or anything like that. We just had a cordial DM conversation. I felt like we probably should just hash this out over the phone. Now, the Michigan Penn State thing was right at the end of the game.
Uh-huh.
And it's one of those, like, we're going to increase our win probability by 0.5% by going
Right.
for 2. And when you don't get it, your win probability drops.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But like now people know why. I mean,
Yeah,
you can
I'm not
argue
gonna-
whether or not you're doing it, but you can't ask the question. If you ask the question now, why are they doing that? That's a you problem. That's a you're ignorant of the landscape.
I'm not trying to be pretentious about it, because I used to have the same belief, right? You're down 15, you score a touchdown.
This is one of those ones
you
that
kick
is
the extra point,
counterintuitive.
and you save the 2-point conversion till the end.
Yeah.
Until someone just explained it to me, and it's like, if you're going to fail, do it earlier.
Right.
It's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that previously. Now I am.
This is one of those ones that is counterintuitive, but once you've been explained the logic, it's not like it makes sense, right? And even if you would deviate or disagree with it, again, like if you can't anymore be asking the question, why is this happening? Like that's just not understanding the information that's pretty important to whatever it is you're talking about. Like I don't know. Anyway,
so it's 31-17. Browns come back, score another touchdown. Deshaun Watson finds Elijah Moore on a nice play. So the Ravens have a 7-point lead. This is a very long game. All the other 4 o'clock games are wrapping up, and it's still 8 minutes left in this game. And then Lamar Jackson has a pass batted up. So for the second straight week, a ball is batted up in a Browns game, just soaring in the air. And the Browns must do a lot of tip drill stuff. Remember last week, Amari Cooper was like tracking this batted pass for a touchdown. This time it's Greg Newsome on the defensive side of the ball, tracks the batted pass, catches it, takes it to the house for a pick six to maybe tie the game, except the Browns missed the extra point. So instead of tying it, it's 31-30. But again, the Browns defense stepped up, made a stop. Browns had an opportunity on the final drive. Deshaun Watson drives them down to the field, and Dustin Hopkins redeems himself with a 40-yard game-winning field goal. Browns win 33-31.
redeems himself. Yeah, like this would be because it's 31-33. You would look at the score and you'd be like, the Browns defense must have been must have finally been overwhelmed or had a bad day, but actually their defense still played really well. Like points came from other places at times, and their performance was really good. The Browns defense is still phenomenal. Myles Garrett had like a TJ Watt game where he had 2 sacks but only 4 total pressures. Like he had that game where he didn't get it like 10 pressures and was a constant source of problem, like pass rush win rate off the charts. But when he won, he got a sack almost half the time.
He needed one of those. He needs one of those for the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, so he's having the season now that, TJ Watt did this a few years ago, and then this became his shtick. And there was a few other guys that, like Khalil Mack had a season like this, where he went from incredible in the run game and getting a ton of pressure, and then he flipped a switch, and suddenly he's getting the impact plays at the end of it. And that's the thing that, transforms you from a perception standpoint when you start making those game-changing plays, not just consistently getting pressure and affecting the game. This is the year where Myles Garrett has already had a high-profile game where he took over and just dominated. He's been getting the sacks. He's having the season that makes people sit up and take notice and go, oh, the guy is playing at a Defensive Player of the Year type of level, even if he's been at that level for a few years now.
Saw this stat from NFL Research that I sent you as well, Sam. Through 10 games.
Yeah.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
The Ravens have trailed less than any other team in NFL history except 2 others through 10 games. So the teams that have trailed the least, is that the fewest number of minutes since whenever, in the last 40 years? The 84 Dolphins.
The merger. It's always the merger.
This is last 40 years is what they're saying.
Yeah.
So they may have cut it off somewhere. 84 Dolphins, only under 15 minutes that they trailed. They started 10-0. The 98 Broncos, 27 minutes. They started 10-0. Third is the Ravens, 28 minutes and 46 seconds. That's all they've trailed this year.
Less than a half.
And they're 7-3. The next 2 teams on the list, the 1990 Giants, 43 minutes. They started 10-0. And the 07 Patriots, 51 minutes. They started 10-0. So there's 4 teams that are 10-0 on this list, and then the 7-3 Ravens. So I ask you, Sam, are the Ravens the best 7-3 team in NFL history?
I have no idea.
Perhaps they are.
Maybe. Yeah. So essentially, of the top 5 teams in the NFL in the last 40 years who have trailed the least, the Ravens are the only one that have actually lost games in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
This was also a very costly game for them. Marlon Humphrey, it sounds like he's going to be done with an Achilles injury. That's what the TV/Twitter doctors are all claiming, right? Don't know. Hasn't been confirmed.
They have a decent hit rate.
But they're all saying popped Achilles. And that is the one injury that they tend to have a pretty, nail strike rate on. So Achilles for Marlon Humphrey, that's pretty bad. Ronnie Stanley went down with a knee injury that's probably not long-term, but is likely to keep him out at least. They're on a short week, right? They play Thursday.
They have to come back Thursday night against the Bengals.
So Stanley is likely out for Thursday. They might be down 3 starters in the offensive line heading into Thursday against a good team. That's not ideal for them. So in addition to the way the game ended up going, it was pretty costly from a personnel standpoint.
There is this, you remember early in the year, the Ravens blew multiple 10-point leads last year. And Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator, took a lot of the heat there. I mean, but there were games last year they didn't close out because of fourth quarter interceptions and everything, and that was this game as well. It was interesting because I thought Lamar had, 2 actual interceptions. This batted pass one, I mean, that's just bad luck. But he also threw one in the end zone that got negated by a defensive hold. And at first I was like, this is such a bad throw. I wonder if he knew that there was a defensive hold. And I don't think he did after reviewing it and seeing when the flag was thrown and everything. So Lamar had a couple really bad throws in there. He had an interception. I don't know what he was seeing just before the half. He threw a pick. And then the end zone one that got negated. Obviously the batted pass one, not on Lamar Jackson. That is just pure luck. But there is something to the Ravens. We'll see if this pops up in the playoffs or wherever. Them closing out games. Because same thing happened in Pittsburgh. They couldn't close out the Steelers. I mean, this is the reason why the Ravens are on this list of they haven't trailed, yet they still have 3 losses. Quirky loss to the Colts in overtime earlier this year, quirky loss to the Steelers, and now this one to the Browns. And, I mean, it literally is the opposite of the Steelers, where the Ravens will dominate the entire game, then lose.
And critical turnovers.
And, critical turn. I mean, again, yesterday, the batted pass one, whatever. I don't know what happens there. But there was something else in the way Lamar Jackson was playing that, the one that was negated was also poor. So just something to keep an eye on with the Ravens. It seems to be a trend here the last couple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ravens are now 7-3. The Browns are 6-3. And Bengals moved to last place. We'll talk about them in a minute here. Last place in the AFC North with their loss. But it's going to be Ravens hosting the Bengals. Short week here on Thursday night. They've been serving up Panthers-Bears to get to the main course here. Thanksgiving month, right? We got the is the turkey the main course? I know nobody likes turkey, but main course on Thursday Night Football is this week. Ravens and Bengals.
Or the turducken.
Oh, yeah, the turducken.